Gonna get started now. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to have Katrina Rogers here from Evergreen Bioscience Innovation Cluster. And if you would all put your cameras on, please, so we can have a quick introduction. I met Katrina several months ago as I started learning more about the Evergreen Bioscience Collaboration Cluster. When I was searching for speakers for the class that were in the area. And I was lucky to sit in on, it was the very first meeting, wasn't it, of the collaboration meeting of the Biosciences Cluster?
Here in October, that's correct. It was our first Voice of the Customer event.
Yeah, so that was really, really exciting. And I felt a little out of place because there were really, really smart people in the room, genetic engineers and entrepreneurs that have multiple companies, medical device inventors, and just a whole host of really, really smart people and people who are really passionate about the biosciences. Katrina is an adjunct faculty here at WSU. Are you still teaching now, or are you with?
I primarily do grant work.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She has a degree in chemistry and right now is the CEO of the Evergreen Bioscience Innovation Cluster. So with that, I'd like to go around and have everyone introduce themselves, just your name, where you're at in the program, and where you work, just really quick. Let's start with Mary Ann.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So my name is Mary Ann Stewart. I have hopefully one more semester after this one until I graduate. So I have my capstone next semester. And I actually just started a new position with a company called MG2. I'm on week 2 now, so as an administrative assistant. And so far it's been a lot of fun and learning a lot. So I look forward to tonight's class. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Brittany and then Erin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Brittany Whitfield. I have about 2 more classes left in the ETM master's program and then my capstone. And I work for an engineering consulting firm called Black & Veatch, and I've been with them just shy of a year now. And I do a lot of civil engineering and mechanical engineering consulting work in water and wastewater. Nice to meet you, Katrina. Looking forward to your talk tonight.
Erin, and then Monica.
My name is Aaron Torres. Currently, this could be my last semester. I'm thinking of moving my project to spring semester. I am doing a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering. So just decided to take some engineering management courses. And I currently work as a system engineer out of at the Hanford site with the company called Amentum.
Excellent. Monica, and then we'll go to Austin.
Hi, I'm Monica Niang. Just one more semester here at the ETM program, capstone next semester. I'm a project engineer at Boeing. Nice to meet you.
Austin, and then David.
Hi, Austin Sunseth. I currently work at Boeing as a mechanical systems engineer. This is my last class before the capstone for the engineering management class, and apologies, I'm logged in twice because my desktop doesn't have a camera, so I'm using my phone here.
Great.
Technology
David.
gets the better of us all the time.
Good evening. I'm David Bunch. I'm a system engineer for Lockheed Martin. I recently used to work for Northrop Grumman, but came back to Lockheed. I have 3 classes left besides the capstone, and I'm looking forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Caitlin, and then Vixen.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin, and I work as a project manager for Washington State Department of Transportation. And I have 2 classes in the capstone left before I graduate.
And Vixen.
Hello, I'm Vixen. I have I think one more course for completing the ETM, and then I'm also completing the doctorate of pharmacy, and I have about a year and a half left. And I work with Providence and Deaconess in Spokane.
Excellent. And Afik. I think he must be having some technical issues. He keeps popping in and out. Did you go, Monica?
Yep, sorry, I did.
Okay, the screen shuffled on me for some reason when Afik. Well, we'll get Afik when he joins permanently instead of popping in and out. All right, Katrina, if I missed anything in your bio, then please share, and I will turn off my share.
Absolutely.
And should be able to share your screen.
Great. Here we go. Okay. Here we are. All right, then. Now let me get people out here so that I can get my video going so that I can see everybody. There we go. That's a better view. All right. Thank you, Jim, and thanks everybody. Thank you, Jim, for inviting me to speak, but thanks everybody for your patience and being here to listen. I am a quality and leadership expert, and I have over 25 years of experience in pharmaceutical and medical device discovery, development, and manufacturing. I get to leverage that expertise in several ways. I have my own professional services firm where I help innovators, investors, and leaders get their medical products from bench to bedside. I am, as Jim said, an adjunct faculty member in the College of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences, where I mainly work on talent development projects using grant funds. And I'm also have the benefit of being named the CEO of Evergreen Bioscience Innovation Cluster. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today. What I really want to share with you here is kind of the what, why, and how of an innovation cluster, particularly focused on the biosciences. All right, well, so let's get started here. Let me get all my everything. Now, we set the stage by noting who you are, and thank you all for your introductions. It gave me a really good perspective on what you're doing, and you're here to because you're in the Master's in Engineering Management program, or you're taking engineering management courses in order to fulfill course requirements or get additional experience. And you're either part of the physical Voiland College of Engineering and Architecture, or more likely on the global campus, I think, based on where everyone is. And you also have quite a considerable amount of individual experience with engineering, and that's part of why you're developing here. You've got your career path ahead of you, and you feel that the engineering management information and coursework is going to help you with that. So what is it that we're all together here for? We recognize that across our region that we are building and growing in medical products discovery, development, and manufacturing. You may not work in this space directly, but it certainly affects you. And we have an increasing amount of investment and companies growing and being built in our region. And you have heard, at least through Jim, about Evergreen Bioscience Innovation, and you're wondering what it is and what really is an innovation cluster and how might we create one in the Pacific Northwest and the Mountain Northwest. So what I hope to tell you a little bit about is what a modern innovation cluster is, why we might choose to build one here, and how we can go about doing that work. So let's get started with that modern innovation cluster, right? So when people ask me, what is a modern innovation cluster? I always tell them, hey, nobody knows. And it's because there are some principles that people who have studied this topic have come across, such as you need investment, you need corporate members, but mostly each one is unique and it's developed with the resources that you have in your region. So, but the definition really is, it's an industry-led collaboration of members from 5 different sectors in an industry vertical. And those 5 sectors are here on this slide: the entrepreneur, the capital, the corporate, the government, and the academic. And our industry vertical is contract services for the life sciences. And I'll get to why we're interested in that in just a little bit here. So we know that that innovation clusters increase global competitiveness. Now, the United States does not benefit from very many innovation clusters and certainly doesn't benefit from many intentionally formed ones. But globally, we do see a number of them. However, Washington does benefit from a very strong maritime cluster called Washington Maritime Blue, which was founded out of the Washington State Department of Commerce. And that's going to be important for something we'll talk about here in a little bit. But here are some other innovation clusters across the globe. We have the Norwegian Seafood Innovation Cluster, Queensland Robotics, which of course is focused on automation and robotics, BioAlps, which is one of the many life science clusters in Europe, and then Cap Digital, which is interested in their cluster focused on digital assets as well as 5G and other related technologies. So I mentioned Washington State Department of Commerce. Last year, in June of last year, they came to us, they called up quite a number of people and said, hey, we want to fund innovation clusters using an innovation cluster accelerator program. And the team I was with said, this is great, what's an innovation cluster? Just the way everybody asks. And they explained to us and worked with us through the project and program so that we could apply for funding to be part of the first cohort. And we're very proud to say that we received our admission to the cohort in spring of this year and got started in March, really actively working on this project. So these are the other members of the cohort. We have Washington Vertical, and they're interested in clean energy technologies, and in particular focused on the small nuclear reactors for localized power sources, sustainable aviation technologies and energies, they're interested in alternative aviation fuels as well as other aviation technologies. Similarly, the Pacific Northwest Aerospace Cluster and is also interested in very similar technologies. You can definitely tell that there was a clean energy bias, and that's not surprising because we're here in Washington State. We have some tech clusters like the Advanced Technology Cluster and the Edge Cluster, the Clean Tech Alliance, Charge 2C, as well as WaveC, and then WaveC, which is our autonomous vehicle cluster. Evergreen Bioscience is the only life science cluster amongst these. So we got started with our project with the more than 76 founding supporters. And that's pretty important. We weren't expecting to see this many players, but this is part of the reason why we think we're going to be a very successful cluster going forward. So you might ask me, why should we form an innovation cluster, particularly one on life sciences here in Washington State? And what about the rest of the region? So the context for the medical product supply chain is kind of shown here graphically on this slide. And the top row shows in the process from discovery through commercialization and distribution for pharmaceuticals. And the bottom row shows it for medical devices. And you can see that some of the icons are pretty similar. They may show up in different spaces during the discovery, development, and manufacturing processes, but in reality, they're quite well aligned. And what we know is that this supply chain makes use of contract services from start to finish for companies to be capital efficient while meeting their milestones and achieving and increasing their capacity. We also know that in our region, both Washington State and in the greater Mountain Northwest, we face some gaps in these contract services. We're pretty strong at the front end in the discovery and the ideation space. We start to get weaker as we move through development, and some of the commercialization spaces we're still a little weak in as well. This is my representation of the gaps, and I'm sure you could think of some of a different representation yourselves. And more importantly, what we hope to do here is to make this valuable for the industry at an ecosystem level. The context for what we are doing is more of a business development organization. So we aim to help people network for strategic partners, to find new suppliers, to uncover and solve their problems, and to connect to resources so that you can integrate your vertical. We also hope to work on attracting, developing, and retaining talent for the ecosystem, and then ultimately creating the spin that will help companies sign new customers and serve new markets. Importantly, we recognize that there's this capacity shortfall is not just in our region, it is actually a global capacity shortfall. So by building more resources here, we will benefit across the West Coast with partners who have often wished that they had someone in their own time zone to work with rather than having to go back to the East Coast for contract services, but also across the Pacific Ocean and really around the globe, providing those ultimately very beneficial supply chain services. So now that you know a little bit about what an innovation cluster is and why we might want to build one, let's talk about how we might go around building one. So obviously we need to recruit some members. We need people who are interested in building the ecosystem and want to join with us to work on projects and to identify ideas and elevate them into the ecosystem. Those ideas, we anticipate that a number of the ideas will be pre-competitive challenges. And a great example of those pre-competitive challenges is the talent issue that everyone seems to be facing. We know that here in Spokane County and in Kootenai County, we are seeing an increase in demand for job postings, and those job postings are looking for people at all levels. And they're looking for people with these kinds of skills, right? GMP skills, skills in SOPs, auditing, in pharmaceuticals quite obviously, but also equipment operation, and then in biology. Just so you know, the work that we're doing is heavily regulated, and I know that many of you also work in heavily regulated industries. We know that the ISO 9000 and systems and the AS 9100 systems are very similar to the GMP requirements for medicines and medical devices. So there's an opportunity here for us to have people float back and forth between different domains. A modern innovation cluster will form innovation teams made of passionate people interested in working on these pre-competitive issues. So our teams to start out with will include our 21st Century Talent Team and our Global Entrepreneurship Hub. And we anticipate that we'll be developing teams around the thriving industry and total supply chain and world-class cluster focus areas. When we are working, we will have a healthy ecosystem. And this is a representation of my representation of what a healthy ecosystem for our cluster looks like. Ultimately, companies will elevate their pain points within the ecosystem, which will generate the ideas and the expertise that will look towards those solutions. Those solutions will attract the money, the community support, and the talent needed in order to make them real, make them commercial. And a modern innovation cluster facilitates this ecosystem by creating and sustaining relationships, by identifying and prioritizing projects, and helping to find funding for those projects, as well as elevating the name recognition of companies nationally and globally. So I hope that in this brief presentation, I have shown you how a group of supporters across multiple domains can create an innovation cluster that will focus on a supply chain spotlights, the supply chain for pharmaceuticals and medical devices, and share ideas and connections to facilitate a greater ecosystem growth in the life sciences. This is our board. We benefit from a very experienced board. And then this is our executive team. And now I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Awesome, thanks. You mentioned projects. I just have a couple of questions and then we'll get the students. What projects do you hope to undertake in the next, prioritize? What's the first project you hope to undertake since it's a really new organization?
Great question, Jim. And I know that you've received the email that lets you know what our top 3 items are. So out of this collaboration event that Jim attended on October 11th with our many colleagues, we identified 3 top priorities. The first one is a capital asset and landscape survey for Spokane County. We're already underway with the RFP for that survey that should be posted here within the next week, and then we will find a contractor to help us with it. The goal of that study is to understand what assets we have that move us in a constructive manner towards a modern life science cluster, and what assets are missing, and what we might specifically do to address some of those gaps. Spokane County benefits from some great resources like the Health Sciences and Services Authority, which matches SBIR and STTR funding for entrepreneurs who are developing developing various kinds of products, mostly focused on medical products. And then we also have great transportation assets and new assets like the rail truck intermodal center they had just groundbreaking today on. The second project that has been identified by our members as a priority would be a regional supply chain directory. So our members would like to know who offers contract services, what those contract services are, and for whom they are. So are they for our contract services available for people in the discovery space, in the development space, in the ideation space, or in the true commercialization area? And lastly, another priority area was making better industry and educator connections so that both industry and educators could participate in talent development projects.
Excellent, thanks. Is Afik on now? Are you there, Afik? He might still be having technical difficulties.
Hi, sorry.
There you are, excellent. Just a quick introduction that you missed. So your name and where you work and where you're at in the program, just real quick. And if you have any questions, go for it.
Sure. Apology for having some technical difficulties in the beginning. Name is Afiq Islam. Currently live in the greater Seattle area. Work for Microsoft. It's becoming close to 7 years now. Responsible for technology delivery and infrastructure for the Americas region. And yeah, that's just something a little about me. Currently, I think I'm just three classes away from completing the program. It's been a wonderful experience so far, just learning about the different domains of engineering management and systems. So it's been an awesome ride so far. So happy to be here and really learn more.
Excellent, thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Katrina?
They all must be stunned.
They're hurriedly searching for their mute button so they can take themselves off mute. Go ahead, Marianne.
So going off of your question, Dr. Jones, I was wondering what your top 3 challenges are as you are starting up here.
Another excellent question. So I would say that our top 3 challenges are obtaining, I think, good engagement with the community. When you're doing an early phase or an early stage initiative, such as ours, people often feel like, what is this? Why should we even be involved? What do what are you actually bringing to the community? So it was important for us to have community members come together and help us identify what were the top projects they wanted us to work on so that we can create something meaningful as quickly as possible. The second challenge is really coming to terms with the cluster business model. So, and a business model in that context, it means what are the sources of revenue you plan to use? How do you plan to work with your partners? Who do you plan to engage as major sponsors? And how will you go about talking to them, right? So ultimately thinking about what is the right level of engagement and business model that helps people understand the value that the cluster brings to the community, and then so that they're interested and engaged to participate. We're at early days yet, but we've had some great successes in that regards. We've made some excellent connections between entrepreneurs and smaller companies to some of our contract service providers in our region already. And we've also had some interest, some national level interest from companies who have heard about Spokane and are wondering what is happening here.
Great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See, we've got it looks like we've got a question in the chat from Vixen.
Oh yeah.
So she wants to know if we could expand on what a talent search project looks like. Does it involve reaching out to students or staff already established in the innovation cluster? Vixen, talent development is a challenging role. I've been working on a project for the last couple of years to help. We have excellent career and technical education in our high schools here in Spokane County and in fact, across Eastern Washington. Many people don't recognize the quality of the students that are coming out of these programs. And it has been a bit of an uphill battle to help people recognize that when they need skilled technical workforce, they ought to think carefully about hiring new candidates from the high schools. I would say that talent development is it's two-pronged. You have to get industry interested and thinking about how they can reformat and rethink their acquisition, how they attract and acquire and retain candidates. You also have to help people see themselves in these roles. So we know that modern industry, and I'm sure you've all seen this, requires people to work in multidisciplinary teams. You need to have some expertise in 2 or 3 areas of your own, but you also have to have a pretty good fundamental knowledge of areas of expertise that are just outside of yours, that some of your colleagues might be more expert in. And you need that in order to work effectively together. And we recognize that sometimes the game of school doesn't make people really good at the game of work. So I expect this to be a longer conversation. Juliet Sinistera of the University District is hosting a conversation in early December where we'll be looking for some more ideas. It will be focused on that academic and industry connection piece.
Was there an opportunity for students to participate in that?
To participate in that event?
Yeah.
Well, so that event will be really focused on looking for trying to tease out where the problem areas are, and then what can the academic members do. For students, well, I think your students in particular likely already have at least some network pretty well established. I would continue to engage in that network. If you are interested in a particular role, it's always a good idea to find somebody who is doing that role and ask them, just sit down with them for a chat to find out, what it's like. Is it a good fit? What would they have done differently moving into it? Where do they see their future career development? And that will help you understand where you're going. I know that students who are just out of their baccalaureate programs often struggle. So I think there's a context for making sure that students have a meaningful industry connection experience, whether that's a short-term internship or something a little bit longer. I did want to find out, David, and we'll answer. I'll address your question here in a minute, but I think I've got a question for this team. How are you guys finding your capstone projects?
I can step out of the room if you need me to, for the honest feedback.
You have slips of paper, pull them out of a hat, or?
From what I guess I've heard from other students, because I haven't learned much about it from my advisor yet, is that we're assigned them, I think, right, Dr. Jones?
Are you talking about the capstones in this class or the capstone
Oh,
project
and the
that they have to
ETM, I guess I should have clarified, yeah.
Yeah,
Capstone for the ETM program or capstone in this class?
I would say, I was thinking the capstone in the ETM program, since so many people are moving towards that, but
Yeah, I think in the program.
Yeah, so that's my next class, and from what I know, I think we'll get a set of topics assigned to us, and then we have to draw on all the experiences from all the classes that we've taken to create an answer for those problems or issues, is from what I gather.
That sounds similar to what I've heard.
yeah, and that's correct. And when they go into, it's 701, when they go into that class, then that's the only class that they're taking at the time.
Mhm.
So they're just kind of
Okay.
ramping up for that class.
excellent. So it's a fair amount of research, thinking about, what the challenges are. And then presumably, Jim, these problems are sourced from the literature, or are they sourced from WSU partner companies?
They're sourced, there's a couple case studies from partner companies, and there's a kind of a made up case study that they will look at. And then I think they also have an opportunity to do their own kind of project as well. But I know I think there's 4 different case studies that more or less align with the certification programs, because we have a certification in project management, in supply chain, and other certs. So the different case studies kind of align with those tracks.
Great.
But yes, a lot of research and a lot of application of the skills that they learn throughout the courses.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks for the answer. So I see that David has asked, what were the major risks that were identified, and what were the measures taken, mitigate, eliminate, and watch? So David, I'm assuming you're asking about the major risks identified for forming a cluster. And then I think that I would say that we identified a couple of major risks that, and I see where you're going here, was really thinking about, doing a risk probability number or some sort of structured assessment. So I would say that when you're forming an innovation cluster, you can only guess at the risks, and you have to continually reevaluate as you go forward. So early on, we felt our major risks were potential economic disruption, likely due to the pandemic, but it turns out that economic disruption due to all sorts of other things has occurred as well. We felt that there was a risk that people might not be engaged as a result of that disruption, or as the result of other sort of unforeseen activities. As we've moved through the first phases of strategy formation, what we've learned is that the economic disruption has actually been very beneficial to the conversation. People recognize that the situation can't continue in a way that it continued previously. We have to think of new ways to manage new challenges and address old challenges that have taken on new and transformed appearances. I would say that we work mostly to mitigate our risks. I think it's very difficult to eliminate them. You can only generally get them to a place where your RPN number is low enough that you're willing to consider them a relatively low business or quality risk. David, let me know if you need more detail.
Yeah, there must have been a ton of unknowns going into creating this brand new biosciences cluster.
Right. We just put together a new operating plan because our original plan had a lot of very fuzzy language in it and very visionary statements. And so at some point you have to start breaking it down into what are you really actually going to do and how are you going to measure it?
Yeah, that's actually where we're at now, is how to measure performance of an innovation strategy. So can you talk to a little bit about how you're going to measure yourselves?
So we will measure ourselves against these projects that our constituents have told us they are very interested in. We are also measuring ourselves by using our social media expansion, because again, awareness is a significant portion, right? The more people that can be aware that this is happening and that it's something they may want to participate in, that will be a very useful number for us to measure. We anticipate that we will identify KPIs as we go through these. And certainly the business model that we finally look at will need to have some very robust KPIs around the financials and put that up.
Oh, that's a great question from Vixen about the hierarchy of roles, power in the innovation cluster.
So Vixen, are you asking what is the hierarchy of roles and power?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering just like if there is any like leadership organization or like if something happens or if there's a problem, like who does someone go to ask for help? And then if they can't answer it, then they would like go up the chain of the command. Is there some sort of chain of command or hierarchy of some sort?
Okay. We are moving in the direction of forming as a nonprofit organization. And we would be a nonprofit corporation, and therefore the board would have that ultimate authority. Leadership roles and activities belong to me as CEO, and our colleague here. Let me share the screen again. Here we can. I can show you some of the people involved here. So. Of course, these are our board members. At this point, they're an advisory board because because we have not yet formed an entity. We're still working on that piece, and ultimately anticipate that that's going to happen sometime next year at the earliest. So, but from the executive team point of view, how do we operate? We have Stacia Rasmussen from Greater Spokane Incorporated. She is the Life Sciences Spokane business manager, and then she is also our project manager. Gary Ballou is Greater Spokane's Vice President of Business Development, and he is a fractional business developer for the cluster. We funnel new companies that are thinking about moving to Spokane and other, I would say, economic development leads to him. He's very expert at it, and so that helps us out quite a bit. And then Ms. Jessie Arter of Speak Niche Consulting is our professional communications coordinator, and she is responsible for building and maintaining our website as well as managing all of our social media. My role is a significant part of my role every day is to get out there and meet with people and to engage. And I've assigned the leadership team the responsibility of pulling together the directory for our suppliers.
So you're really basically in a very early stages of a startup. And
that's a great way to put it. And I like to think of it exactly that way, that we need to be a little scrappy. We need to think about what it is that we're going to be delivering. I see us as a platform business model where fundamentally we're serving each one of our sector areas with connections and products that serve their needs. And those products will probably be a little bit minimal and more about the network environment to start out with, but we anticipate that we'll be building towards a future that will have value for all five.
excellent.
Any other questions?
One question. This is Afiq. Just wondering, who would you consider your top competitors are?
People ask me that. I would say that an innovation cluster doesn't necessarily have competitors. We have collaborators, and we have people who are, I would say, maybe more or less aligned with what we're trying to do. People ask me if Life Science Washington is a competitor, and I say that they are not, and they have proved that by being a part of our supporting team to start out with, both the Life Science Washington and its institute. We work in adjacent spaces. So Life Science Washington is the trade association for life sciences in the state, and they are focused statewide and serve all members of everyone who is involved in life sciences that wishes to be a member. And a trade association is different than a business development organization, which is what an innovation cluster fundamentally is. So we're working on more of an economic development angle, but also an ecosystem development angle. But both organizations would make similar kinds of network connections, and they might work on projects, but an innovation cluster is really focused on building the projects out from the members' needs, as opposed to thinking about how do we build, how do we create a trade association that supports all of our members.
So you're kind of like the front end ideation process through projects. Then once they have a product, for lack of a better word, then that would be kind of the handoff to the life sciences. They're more of the operationalization of the output.
I think both of us can play in similar spaces, but I would say that from a business development perspective, an innovation cluster is more forward thinking about building the specific resources that an ecosystem needs.
Great question. Vixen, what was it like to recruit companies to join the innovation cluster in the beginning, the marketing seminars, etc.?
Actually,
questions too.
This was a lot of fun. We didn't really do a tremendous amount of marketing. We needed some sort of online presence. So one of our colleagues built a LinkedIn company page for us so that we could all link to it. The board, many of the board members were already on board for the initial application and the support. So this was a case that we leveraged our networks. We got out and we spoke to people. We made invitations. We showed them what we were doing and said, would you like to be a supporter? And really being a supporter at this point was just saying, yes, I'm really interested in building something and having something like this in our ecosystem. And I'm willing to lend you my my name and my logo in order to support it. Afiq, attrition.
Yeah, and this is pretty interesting. Reading lots of articles about the Great Resignation going on. What sort of strategy or comes to mind on how to kind of retain the current talent or even attract new talent to join the team?
Right. I think we have to be more open-minded about the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are needed for particular positions. And this is a challenge that companies face, but I think also that individuals who are looking for positions face too, is how do you position yourself and how do you show that you have what's needed in order to be successful in that role. And it gets to us beginning to think about it rather than a job posting or a position description, more about rather than saying, well, these are all the people that we've hired in the past. And so we're just looking for the same kind of people we're hiring in the past, and really digging into saying, well, what do we think you need to be successful, and what could we train you if you had some baseline skills? What could we train you to do? Companies, I think, fail to recognize the value in their own employees And you make a great point about it, the attrition piece, right? If your company is sticky and a great place to work, you don't have the same problems that other people do. And a lot of that is just thinking about, we've gone through a couple of decades here where more and more companies thought of people as interchangeable parts, and that's not true. Minds are not interchangeable parts, and good employees are going to float to where they can go. I like to think about talent on the ecosystem level. So if you're in a city and there's only one employer that employs the type of person that a person with your skills, that seems very threatening to you. When you want to change a role, you would have to actually move out of that city. If we spread out and think about it as an ecosystem, think about our area as an ecosystem. When we talk about pharmaceutical manufacturing, we talk about medical device manufacturing. In pharmaceuticals, we have manufacturers both in Oregon and in Montana, as well as here in Spokane. And we have new companies forming all the time that are very related to that. So if you think about pharmaceutical sterile fill finish manufacturing is CGMP in the same way that, say, milk products are CGMP and milk product manufacturing. So learning to be adaptable as a company, but also learning to be adaptable as people is a very important part of the attrition piece. And I think that companies will need to be more flexible about how they want to do their work arrangements. If they want people to use their education benefits, there may need to be more flexibility about what kinds of shifts and hours people can work so that they can have the opportunity to go to classes and to do the studying that they need to advance themselves. Flexible work assignments, including new assignments that would provide people with challenges and help them expand their skills. Companies face problems all the time. If you can pull together a team of smart individuals, you're likely to get many more good ideas than you would if you just have the senior leadership sit and cogitate about a problem for a while. Afik, does that answer at least part of your question?
It does. It absolutely does. And maybe my follow-up, response to that would be like, are we thinking about providing something, completely different than any other companies that are out there? And, obviously not aside from compensation package, right? Like, all these things, I would say more or less one company or the other offers, whether it's flexible time and career growth. Are we thinking about anything that, hey, you're working in this team, this is something completely different you'll get out of it, which you won't get any place else? Are we thinking anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. So my question, or at least my challenge to companies would be to say, what makes it hard for your employees to come to work? What are the challenges that they face to get here every day? And start to find some of those and see what you can do about them. How do you make employees' lives just a little bit easier? How do you make it so that your benefits programs are work easier so that people don't have to spend a whole bunch of time outside of their work day fixing problems that are because of the medical coverage system or the dental coverage system that is giving them problems? Almost everybody will point out that if they've got children of certain ages, that childcare is an issue, right? And reliable childcare. And that's not something that companies can solve, but it's certainly some companies can have a good conversation with their communities about. And that, to me, that's a community level. There's a community level solution for that, but it involves companies getting involved with their communities.
Great question. Then we have the issue of the quiet quitting now, where if it's not specifically called out in the position description that the employee is not motivated to do a particular task, they don't go. There's this trend for people to not go above and beyond now.
Sure. And I think that's really well aligned with the same issue, right? Which is, are your reward structures clear? Are there, how and why do you engage your employees, right? If you're only engaging them on the surface level, then what motivation do they have to be motivated to be in the company, right? Companies, we know that companies can be very successful when they adopt models that engage their employees more and make them feel more like a community. I don't know that we'll be back to the days of companies feeling like family, and I don't know whether that may not be a healthy model either, but certainly feeling connected and motivated within your teams and within your larger company is a really important part of wanting to kind of create that resilience and that stick-to-itiveness that helps you work a little bit harder.
Yeah, and I actually have to relate to one of the other classes I've taken in the program, management of strategy and management. And I think in one of the classes, I think I learned, about how companies are looking to advocate and promote that, hey, we're looking to have new people in the team, and we're not here to manage you, but we're here to lead you. So I think that was pretty moving to just hear that, how new folks joining the workforce, it's not considered just a new employee, but a new team member, part of the team, and collectively marching towards success. So yep.
It's a great point. And then I think we also have to, as leaders, think about how to minimize and hopefully eliminate some of the negative tendencies we have as human beings, right? I think we've all experienced at least one or more episodes of shoot the messenger when there's a problem. That tendency it's a very human tendency, but we just have to reel it back in. We also want to be able to encourage people to have learning experiences, because we're humans, we make mistakes. And it would be better for people to feel comfortable acknowledging and recognizing that an issue has occurred and a mistake maybe has occurred, and then solve the problem, as opposed to, trying to make people feel bad for their very human reactions and experiences.
Yeah, fail fast and learn from it.
Very much so.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had one more. This is Brittany.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Craig.
I was curious about the State Department of Commerce and their involvement. The reason I ask, I used to be a city government employee, and that department, along with the State Department of Health, they always had just multiple opportunities for grant funding and loan applications. I did a lot of loan applications and grant applications for capital improvement projects, but I guess I'm wondering, do they get involved with any grant awards with innovation clusters or in your line of work? I didn't know if the state departments help with that or not.
No, absolutely, Brittany. Our starter funding came from Washington State Department of Commerce. It was their Innovation Cluster Accelerator program that's we're in the first cohort of. And this is really novel here in the United States and actually globally too. So the program is being watched by other cluster managers and cluster organizations, cluster support organizations, because they're interested in finding out how will it work, and what will be the success strategies. So it's quite fun to be in an accelerator with the other cluster members, even though none of them are in life sciences. We always have good ideas for each other, and so we meet together quarterly as leaders to talk about our particular challenges and kind of try to brainstorm together to solve our challenges. And then we're also meeting independently as small groups when we find ideas that we think could operate, that two or more clusters could work together on.
Great, thank you. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And you're absolutely right about the Department of Commerce. They have lots of opportunities for funding. We do anticipate that at least some of our funding going forward will continue to come from commerce, but this would be the challenge of the business model, right? But moving towards revenue sources that are not so government dependent.
Yeah, Afik mentions that the textbook, Schilling referred to technology clusters.
Right.
And
that's definitely an alternative term.
Yeah. What other questions do you have? Or did we exhaust them all? There's a mosquito buzzing around my room right now. So if you see me clapping, it's because I'm trying to squash this little button.
Give it a day, it'll be cold enough.
Yeah, very soon, probably this weekend. So one final question then,
Okay.
and then what does success look like for the cluster in, say, 5 years? When you come back in 5 years, what is the environment looking like?
Okay, in 5 years, we will have the major life science players as part of the innovation clusters as active members. They will be sending people from their organizations to participate on innovation teams, both as development opportunities, but also as a way to solve their pre-competitive problems. We'll have a robust business model that will incorporate funding sources, cluster-specific funding sources, but also the membership funds, and then likely we'll continue to have some element of government funding just because the government sector likes to participate in these activities. I'd like our cluster, I see our cluster as being globally recognized and certainly very strong nationally in the United States as a source of contract services. And I also think that we will very likely expand into some other areas of life science. We needed to focus our efforts to start out with, and so that's why we chose the contract service space. But we see quite a bit of this effort as being well aligned with our ag biotech and our the kind of other spaces that are likely to form in our region. The President's initiatives on biomanufacturing that's a huge part of what we look to long term. We anticipate that there'll be great ways for us to manufacture new raw materials and different kinds of raw materials using biotechnology.
Excellent. That's a big vision. That's very exciting to have you here and at this kind of formative stage of the cluster. And I'm going to be excited to be part of it and watch it as it grows and that vision becomes reality. Any other questions before we turn Katrina loose? All right, everybody go off of mute, please.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for their attention and for all of the excellent questions. Jim, you were right. You've got some great students here, and I think I'm excited for your future opportunities as management.
All right, thanks. Let's give Katrina a round of applause, real live applause. Thank you very much, Katrina. It was a pleasure having you in class tonight, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Awesome. All right. How cool was she? And I'm going to stop the recording so that I can